The air is thick with the scent of burning copal, a sacred resin that curls into the night sky like a serpent rising toward the stars. Drumbeats echo through the temple courtyard, their rhythm pulsing in time with hundreds of chanting voices. At the center of it all, a priest raises an obsidian blade, its edge gleaming in the torchlight. This moment, frozen in time, captures just one fragment of the Aztec world, a civilization whose rituals were as elaborate as they were enigmatic. Imagine standing there, surrounded by towering pyramids draped in vivid murals, witnessing ceremonies so intense they blurred the line between the earthly and the divine. This wasn't just performance, it was a bridge to the cosmos, a dialogue with gods who demanded both reverence and blood. Centuries later, archaeologists still pore over the remnants of these rituals, piecing together clues from crumbling codices, unearthed artifacts, and the accounts of stunned Spanish conquistadors. But for every answer they uncover, a dozen new questions arise. Why did the Aztecs believe their gods required human hearts to keep the sun moving across the sky? How did a society so advanced in astronomy and architecture also embrace practices that seem unfathomable today? These aren't just historical footnotes, they're windows into a world where life, death, and the divine were inextricably linked. The Aztecs didn't just perform rituals, they wove them into the very fabric of existence, turning ceremonies into cosmic necessities. Today, we're diving deep into 25 of these mesmerizing rituals, each one a puzzle that continues to stump experts. From the famous and infamous bloodletting ceremonies to lesser-known rites involving sacred animals and hallucinogenic plants, these traditions reveal a culture of staggering complexity. Some were acts of breathtaking beauty, like the floating gardens dedicated to water deities. Others, like the ritualistic ball game where defeat could mean sacrifice, remind us how high the stakes truly were. But here's the gripping part. Modern researchers are still uncovering hidden layers to these practices, debating their meanings, and occasionally stumbling upon discoveries that rewrite what we thought we knew. So join us as we step into the shadows of Tenochtitlan's temples, where every artifact, every mural, and every surviving whisper of the past holds a story waiting to be unraveled. The Aztecs may be gone, but their mysteries are very much alive. Picture the night air heavy with anticipation as every flame across the Aztec Empire flickers out, homes, temples, even the palace plunged into darkness. This was the new fire ceremony, a ritual so critical it unfolded only once every 52 years, marking the end of one cosmic cycle and the trembling beginning of another. The stakes couldn't be higher. According to Aztec belief, if the ceremony failed, the sun would vanish forever, plunging the world into eternal night. To prevent this catastrophe, priests clad in sacred regalia climbed the hill of the star, their eyes fixed on the constellation of the Pleiades. If the stars aligned, signaling the gods' approval, the ceremony could proceed. A captive warrior, chosen for his strength and courage, was laid upon a stone altar. The high priest raised an obsidian blade and with a single stroke opened the man's chest. In that moment, fire was kindled from his still beating heart, a blaze carried by runners to every corner of the empire, reigniting civilization itself. But how much of this was literal and how much symbolic? Archaeologists have grappled with this question for decades. Excavations near the Hill of the Star have uncovered charred remains and ceremonial blades, suggesting the ritual did involve human sacrifice. Yet some scholars argue the heart fire may have been a metaphor, a spiritual rekindling rather than a physical one. The debate hinges on fragments of surviving codices, where illustrations show priests holding torches aloft, but the finer details remain ambiguous. One artifact, a stone box etched with flames and sacrificial imagery, was found near the Templo Mayor, its purpose still debated. Was it used to transport the sacred fire, or did it hold the ashes of offerings? The answers lie somewhere between archaeology and the whispers of history. What's undeniable is the ceremony's profound symbolism. The 52-year cycle mirrored the Aztec calendar's intricate mesh of solar and sacred counts, a convergence of time and divinity. Extinguishing every flame represented the fragility of existence, while the new fire signaled rebirth, a cosmic reset. Imagine the relief of thousands as distant torches flared on the horizon, proof that the gods had granted another cycle. Today, modern Mexicans still celebrate a descendant of this ritual during the annual Fuego Nuevo festivals, a haunting echo of the past, yet the original ceremony's full depth may never be unlocked. Each discovery, from buried braziers to skeletal remains, adds another piece to the puzzle, but the new fire ceremony remains one of the Aztecs' most haunting and enigmatic traditions. The priests stood motionless in the temple courtyard, their bodies draped in something far more gruesome than ceremonial robes, human skin, still glistening with traces of blood. These were the living embodiments of Xipe Totec, the Flayed One, a god whose very name evoked the ritual that both fascinated and horrified those who witnessed it. Each year, selected captives were led to the altar, their hearts offered to the sun. But death was only the beginning. Skilled hands worked swiftly with razor-sharp flint knives, peeling away skin in near-perfect sheets, which priests then wore for 20 days as if they were second skins. The effect was grotesque yet sacred, flesh rotting in the sun, the boundary between divine and human dissolving with each passing hour. Archaeologists have uncovered chilling proof of this practice. Burial sites near temples dedicated to Xipe Totec reveal skeletons with telltale cut marks along the arms and legs, precise incisions suggesting ritual precision rather than battlefield chaos. Ceramic figurines depict hollow-eyed figures draped in flayed skin, the folds and wrinkles painstakingly detailed by ancient artists. Most striking are the flaying knives themselves, obsidian blades so sharp they could slice through muscle with surgeon-like accuracy, now resting silently in museum cases, their edges still gleaming after centuries. Yet despite these tangible clues, the ritual's deeper meaning remains fiercely debated. Some scholars argue the skin wearing symbolized renewal, like a snake shedding its skin or corn husks peeling away to reveal new life. Xipe Totec was a god of agriculture as much as sacrifice, and the rotting flesh may have represented fertile decay feeding the earth. Others point to accounts describing how the skins were finally discarded in hidden caves, perhaps an offering to the underworld. But a rebellious faction of researchers challenges this view, citing codices that imply the skins were trophies, a way to absorb the victim's strength or even mock their defeated communities. The truth might lie somewhere in between, a fusion of terror, reverence, and cosmic theater meant to shock the senses and bind the faithful through visceral spectacle. One of the most unsettling discoveries came in 2018, when archaeologists unearthed a stone relief showing a priest mid-transformation, his human face emerging grotesquely from the mouth of the flayed skin. It's the sort of image that lingers in the mind, forcing us to confront how little we truly understand about the line between horror and holiness in Aztec spirituality. Modern reconstructions of the ritual using pigments and replicas reveal the skins would have hardened like leather within days, cracking and tightening until the priests could barely move. Imagine the smell, the unbearable itch, the psychological weight of carrying death on your shoulders for weeks. This wasn't merely ritual, it was endurance, a metamorphosis meant to bridge the human and the divine through suffering. Perhaps that's why Xipe Totec's cult spread so far beyond the Aztecs, influencing cultures from the Maya to the Huastec. His rituals were unforgettable by design, searing themselves into memory. Today, echoes of the Flayed One persist in unexpected places. Mexican folk dances where performers wear masks resembling rotting flesh, or carnival traditions where participants don exaggerated skins. But the original rite's full significance may be lost to time. Every flaying knife, every skeletal mark, every crumbling fresco adds another clue, yet the central mystery endures. Was this a brutal metaphor for rebirth, a display of dominance, or something far more profound? The gods, it seems, demanded more than blood. They demanded transformation. 5 men climbed to the top of a towering pole, their bodies silhouetted against the sky as the crowd below holds its breath. One by one, they lean backward into nothingness, ropes coiled around their waists, and begin to spin downward in widening circles, like human satellites orbiting an invisible center. This is the Volador ceremony, a ritual so ancient its roots sink deep into Aztec cosmology, yet so alive you can still witness it today in plazas across Mexico and Guatemala. But the modern spectacle, with its vibrant costumes and rhythmic flute music, is just a sliver of what this ritual once meant to the Aztecs. This wasn't performance. It was a daring act of cosmic communication, a prayer spun into motion. Archaeologists have unearthed stone platforms with circular indentations at sites like Templo Mayor and El Tajín footprints of the original Volador poles. These bases, often adorned with carvings of eagles and serpents, hint at the ritual's sacred geometry. The 4 flyers represented the cardinal directions, while the central 5th figure, who played flute and drum at the summit before descending, embodied the axis mundi, the sacred connection between earth and sky. But here's the mystery. While Spanish chronicles describe the ceremony's visual drama, none fully explain its theological significance. Was it a reenactment of the sun's journey? A plea for rain, or something darker? A broken mural at Toxcatl shows figures mid-plummet, their ropes entwined with vines, perhaps linking the ritual to agricultural cycles or the myth of the falling sky. The most tantalizing clue comes from a surviving Nahuatl poem referencing the dance that calls down the fire, suggesting the flyers may have channeled celestial energy. Modern Voladors confirm this spiritual thread. Many still pray silently as they spin, though the original chants are lost, yet the physicality of the ritual raises questions. Replicas of the poles, some over 100 feet tall, reveal the astonishing engineering behind them: angled notches to guide ropes, platforms designed to sway slightly in wind, all without metal tools. This wasn't just symbolism, it was a feat of physics and faith combined. What's striking is how the ceremony's meaning has transformed over time. Colonial authorities tried to ban it, viewing the ritual as pagan, but it persisted in disguise, merging with Christian elements. Today, some Voladors perform for tourists, while others, particularly in remote indigenous communities, maintain older traditions, offering the dance during droughts or festivals. Researchers recently discovered traces of blue pigment on an ancient pole fragment, the color of sacrifice, raising the possibility that the ritual once involved blood offerings. But without written records, we're left to piece together the puzzle from silent artifacts and the whispers of descendants who still feel the pull of the spinning sky. Perhaps that's the most haunting aspect of the Volador, its endurance. When those ropes unwind and the flyers spiral earthward, they're not just reenacting history, they're keeping alive a conversation with the divine that began centuries ago. The poles may have weathered, the songs shifted, but the dizzying descent still captures that primal longing to touch the heavens and return unharmed to tell the tale. Beneath the steps of the great temple in Tenochtitlan, archaeologists made a discovery that still sends chills down the spine: dozens of small skeletons, their bones arranged in careful rows, each adorned with tiny beads shaped like glistening tears. These were offerings to Tlaloc, the storm god whose gifts of rain came at a terrible price. The Aztecs believed that children, with their innocent voices and uncorrupted spirits, carried a purity that could move the deity to mercy. But what's most haunting isn't just the act itself, it's the eerie details. The children's jewelry, crafted from jade and shell, mimicked teardrops as if their sorrow could summon Tlaloc's rains. Some skulls show signs of prolonged illness, suggesting these weren't just random victims but children chosen for their suffering, their pain transformed into a sacred bridge between earth and sky. Yet the controversy lies in the interpretation. Spanish chroniclers described these sacrifices as brutal and wholesale, but modern excavations reveal a more nuanced picture. At the Templo Maya site, some child burials include delicate figurines of frogs, Tlaloc, sacred animals placed gently in their hands, implying a ritual of care as much as violence. Chemical analysis of the bones tells another story. Many children consumed a diet rich in maize and amaranth in their final months, a marked contrast to the poorer classes. Were they pampered before their deaths, or were these offerings from elite families seeking divine favor? The debate rages on, with some scholars arguing the sacrifices were acts of communal desperation during droughts, while others see them as political theater, a way for rulers to showcase their control over life and the elements. Equally unsettling are the traces of bloodletting rituals that permeated Aztec society, far beyond the grand spectacles of temple sacrifices. Every household kept obsidian blades sharp enough to draw blood with a mere whisper of pressure. Nobles and commoners alike would pierce their tongues, ears, or genitals, threading straw or maguey spines through the wounds to keep them open, letting their blood fall onto strips of bark paper. These gruesome offerings weren't just for show. They were acts of reciprocity, a way to feed the gods who'd spilled their own blood to create humanity. Archaeologists have uncovered hundreds of these blades in humble dwellings, not just temples, suggesting self-sacrifice was as routine as prayer. But how far did this practice really extend? The Spanish exaggerated its brutality, but recent forensic studies on recovered skeletons reveal a startling pattern. Many adults, especially women, show healed scars along their thighs and calves, consistent with repeated ritual cuts. Some burial sites contain small ceramic bowls stained with iron residue, likely used to collect blood. Yet the most provocative find came from a midden near Texcoco, a cache of blades alongside miniature corn husks, hinting that bloodletting might have been tied to agricultural cycles, with commoners offering their blood to nourish the soil. The paradox of these rituals is their duality, horror intertwined with profound reverence. A child's tear-shaped bead and a farmer's bloodied blade were both acts of devotion, a language of sacrifice that modern minds struggle to decipher. Were they acts of oppression or willing participation in a cosmic contract? The artifacts whisper fragments of the answer, but the full truth remains as elusive as Tlaloc storms a tempest of faith, necessity, and the unyielding human drive to bargain with forces beyond our control. The Chosen One walked through the streets of Tenochtitlan draped in turquoise robes, his skin dusted with gold, flowers woven into his hair. For an entire year, this youth, selected for his flawless appearance and noble bearing, lived as the living incarnation of Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror god. He was taught to play the flute, to speak with eloquence, to carry himself with divine grace. Commoners bowed as he passed, for he was no longer a mortal but a vessel for the god himself. Then, on the day of Toxcatl, the 5th month of the Aztec calendar, the illusion shattered. Climbing the steps of the Templo Maya, he broke his flute on the stones, one piece for each direction, before his chest was opened and his heart offered to the sun. To the Aztecs, this was no murder, it was the ultimate honor, a sacred transformation. Spanish chronicler Diego Duran recorded the ceremony with horrified fascination, describing how the youth went willingly to his death, embracing his role until the final moment. But what shocked archaeologists wasn't the sacrifice itself, it was the precision of the selection process. Excavations near the Templo Maya uncovered the remains of several young men buried with extraordinary care, their bones showing no signs of malnutrition or hard labor. Dental analysis revealed diets rich in chocolate and exotic spices, while the positioning of their limbs suggested they were laid to rest in poses of repose, not forced submission. One skeleton, found in the 1990s, still wore remnants of a jade necklace, its beads carved into tiny mirrors, a direct link to Tezcatlipoca's iconography. The real mystery lies in how these youths were chosen. Surviving codices mention candidates being scrutinized for unblemished skin, straight limbs, and even-toned voices, but offer no clues about who these boys truly were. Were they noble sons given up willingly or captives groomed for the role? Forensic anthropologists note something peculiar. Some skulls show faint marks consistent with deliberate head shaping in infancy, a practice reserved for the elite. This suggests the Aztecs might have planned these sacrifices years in advance, molding children literally and figuratively for their fate. Yet other skeletons bear genetic markers linking them to distant regions, hinting at a darker possibility that some were tribute from conquered cities offered as living trophies. The ceremony's abrupt end adds another layer of tragedy. In 1520, during the Toxcatl rites, Spanish forces under Pedro de Alvarado attacked the unarmed celebrants in what became known as the Massacre of the Great Temple. Doron's account describes the chosen youth dying mid-ceremony, his blood mixing with that of the butchered crowd. Recent digs uncovered a trove of shattered flutes and ceremonial knives in a single stratum of sediment, all carbon dated to the early colonial period, physical proof of the violence that day. But the most poignant find was a small gold disc etched with a mirror image found clutched in the hand of a young male skeleton. Had this been the last Tezcatlipoca impersonator, killed before he could complete his transformation? What unsettles researchers most is the duality of the ritual. The Toxcatl sacrifice wasn't just about death. It was a year-long performance where a human became divine, then returned that divinity to the gods in an act of cosmic recycling. Modern reconstructions of the youth's final days, based on chemical traces in his hair and nails, reveal he consumed increasing amounts of hallucinogenic mushrooms and morning glory seeds, perhaps to ease his passage or blur the line between man and deity. The mirrors he carried weren't mere ornaments. They reflected the Aztec belief that reality itself was an illusion, as fleeting as the smoke of Tezcatlipoca's namesake. Today, the ruins of the Templo Maya still whisper fragments of this ritual. A fresco uncovered in 2012 shows a youth playing flute atop a pyramid, his body half transparent as if caught between worlds. Was this artistic license or a glimpse into how the Aztecs saw him? Not as a victim but as a bridge. The answer might lie in the Nahuatl word for the ceremony, Ixiptla, meaning both impersonator and image. To sacrifice the perfect youth wasn't to destroy him but to release the god within, a concept as beautiful as it is, to modern eyes, unbearably cruel. The mirrors have shattered, the flute songs faded, but the mystery endures. Did these boys know their fate from the beginning, or did they learn, month by month, that divinity demands the ultimate price? The thunder of rubber balls echoed through the stone courts as two teams battled under the blazing sun, their movements as precise as they were brutal. This was no ordinary sport. It was the Aztec ball game known as Alamalistli, where players used hips and elbows to drive a solid rubber ball through stone hoops mounted high on the walls. But the real stakes weren't points or pride. Spanish accounts describe a chilling finale, the captain of the losing team, or sometimes the winning one, kneeling before a priest, his head severed in one swift stroke. Yet for all the graphic descriptions, archaeologists still grapple with the most basic question: who exactly faced the knife and why? Courts excavated across Mesoamerica, from Tenochtitlan to Chichen Itza, reveal haunting details. Reliefs on the walls depict headless players, their blood transformed into serpents or vines, symbols of renewal. At El Tajin, a carving shows a player holding his own severed head, while 7 streams of blood gush from his neck, each one sprouting into a fruit-bearing plant. But the most macabre discovery came in the ruins of Cantona, where a scoreboard-like stone displayed not numbers but a row of skulls. Nearby, researchers found decapitated skeletons buried with their ballgame yokes still strapped to their waists, the heavy stone and leather belts used to strike the ball. Were these the losers, punished for failure, or were they honored victors, sacrificed because their skill made them worthy offerings? the debate hinges on conflicting evidence. Diego Duran's colonial-era writings insist the losers paid the price, a warning against weakness. But the Popol Vuh, the Maya creation story, tells of heroic ball players who triumphed only to be sacrificed by the gods themselves. Some courts, like the one at Tlaloc, feature gold rings adorned with skulls suggesting scoring might have been a death sentence. Then there's the enigma of the volunteer sacrifices. A codex fragment shows a bound captive playing in ornate garb, his fate sealed before the game began. Was this a mock battle, a way for prisoners to fight for their lives knowing the outcome was rigged? Chemical analysis adds another twist. Bones from sacrificed players at Tenochtitlan show higher levels of protein and rare minerals than average citizens, implying they were elite athletes fed special diets. Yet at lesser sites, skeletal remains bear signs of malnutrition and healed fractures, likely captives forced to play. The most perplexing find came from a small court in Veracruz, where 7 headless bodies were arranged in a circle, each clutching a jade bead in one hand. Jade symbolized life, but the beads were carved with the glyph for wind, linking them to Toxcatl, the god of breath. Were these men giving their last breath to power the winds that brought rain? Perhaps the answer lies in the game's deeper symbolism. The ball represented the sun's perilous journey through the underworld each night, and the court was a cosmic battleground. Decapitation mirrored the sun's death at dusk, necessary for its rebirth at dawn. Modern players from indigenous communities still perform ritual games, though without the fatal finale. Watching them, one notices how the ball's trajectory mimics the arc of the sun, rising, falling, rebounding. It's a reminder that for the Aztecs, sacrifice wasn't just about death, it was about sustaining the fragile balance of the universe. The ball game was a prayer in motion, where every strike, every drop of blood kept the cosmos spinning. Whether victor or vanquished, the players weren't victims. They were essential threads in the fabric of existence, their fate as unpredictable as the game itself. The silence of the tees apparently was louder than any scream, row upon row of skulls staring emptily from wooden racks, their hollow sockets tracking every passerby like a macabre audience frozen in time. Spanish conquistadors wrote of these skull racks with trembling hands, claiming they stretched the length of entire city blocks, holding tens of thousands of victims. But only in the last decade, with ground-penetrating radar and laser scanning, have archaeologists begun to grasp the staggering scale of these structures. Beneath the ruins of Tenochtitlan's Great Temple, researchers uncovered a circular tower of skulls, each carefully drilled through the sides and threaded onto poles like beads on a string. The tower's base extended deep underground, revealing chamber after chamber packed with craniums, some still bearing traces of bright pigment, their teeth inlaid with jade. The question that haunts historians isn't just the number, but the logistics. How did the Aztecs process so many bodies? Recent excavations at Xoltepec, a site linked to the Flowery Wars, uncovered lime pits where bones were stripped clean by quicklime, then sorted with chilling efficiency. Skulls went to the tees apparently, femurs became tools, and ribs were carved into musical instruments. But the biggest revelation came in 2020, when chemical analysis showed something unexpected. Many skulls belonged to women and children, contradicting the long-held belief that only warriors were displayed. Were these victims of famine sacrifices, or proof that the racks served more than just military propaganda? Debate rages over their purpose. Traditional views painted the tees apparently as psychological warfare, a warning to enemies. Yet surviving Nahuatl poetry describes them as the sacred cornfield of the gods, where skulls were seeds ensuring cosmic fertility. Infrared scans of the Great Temple's tower revealed alternating layers of male and female skulls arranged in patterns mirroring Aztec star charts. Perhaps this wasn't just intimidation, it was astronomy in bone, a gruesome almanac tracking celestial cycles. The most unsettling discovery lies beneath. Last year, sonar detected hollow spaces under the Zocalo, Mexico City's central square, where vibrations suggest more chambers wait intact. One archaeologist described it as a honeycomb of memory, potentially holding answers about whether the Spanish exaggerated the counts or underestimated them. But until excavations begin, the racks remain a paradox, both monument and ledger, horror and hymn, their full story locked behind the teeth of the dead. Every skull is a word in a language we're still learning to decipher. Deep in the earth beneath what was once an Aztec village, archaeologists uncovered something unexpected: tiny figures woven from dried corn husks, each one carefully wrapped in strips of bark paper and buried in shallow pits alongside miniature clay vessels. At first glance, they might resemble children's toys, but the context reveals a far more solemn purpose. These husk bundles, some no larger than a hand, were central to a ritual so enigmatic that even the conquistadors failed to document it clearly. Found arranged in circles near fields and granaries, their placement suggests a ceremony tied to the very heartbeat of Aztec survival, the maize harvest. The most revealing discovery came from a dig near Toxcatl, where researchers found 72 such bundles buried in a perfect grid, one for each day in the Aztec agricultural cycle. Each figure was unique, with some shaped like humans and others resembling animals or even abstract symbols. Under microscopic analysis, traces of blood were detected on the husks, matching the cuts often left by magi spines used in auto-sacrifice. But here's the puzzle: were these offerings to the corn goddess Chichimequotl or part of a darker rite? A broken mural nearby depicts farmers burying similar figures while priests chant, their speech scrolls ending in raindrops, a possible plea for timely storms. Yet one bundle, unearthed in 2019, contained a startling addition: a human finger bone wrapped inside the husks, sparking debate over whether this was symbolism or something more visceral. Theories diverge sharply. Some scholars argue the bundles represented the bones of maize itself, ritually planted to ensure fertile soil, a sympathetic magic echoing the myth of Quetzalcoatl, who stole corn from the underworld by hiding kernels in his own ribs. Others point to colonial-era Nahuatl nursery rhymes describing husk children who ward off crop blight. But the most provocative interpretation comes from a recently decoded codex fragment, where a glyph showing a sprouting cornstalk emerges from a bundle labeled Ixipla, the same term used for sacrificial impersonators. Could these humble figures have served as stand-ins for human offerings, absorbing the need for bloodshed in a gentler form of devotion? Modern parallels add another layer. In remote Mexican villages, farmers still bury corn dollies before planting, though none recall the origin of the practice. When researchers recreated the ritual using traditional techniques, they noticed something uncanny. The husks, when buried in damp soil, slowly decomposed in a way that eerily mimicked the growth cycle of maize, first swelling, then splitting open as if sprouting. Was this the point all along? To the Aztecs, perhaps death and rebirth weren't just metaphors but forces to be physically enacted, a dialogue with the earth written in husk and blood. The quiet dignity of these bundles lingers. Unlike the grand temple sacrifices, this was a ritual of the people, performed by calloused hands that knew the weight of a bad harvest. Every twisted husk, every drop of blood pressed into the earth whispered the same plea: let life spring from what is buried. In that sense, the corn husk bundles may hold the purest key to understanding Aztec spirituality, not as a culture obsessed with death, but one that saw sacrifice as the necessary thread weaving together life's fragile tapestry. Steam curls through the low doorway of the temazcal, carrying the scent of cedar and crushed herbs as the last participant crawls inside. This dome-shaped sweat bath, its walls blackened by generations of sacred fires, was far more than a place to cleanse the body. It was a womb of rebirth where the Aztecs blurred the lines between healing and holiness. Archaeologists have uncovered these structures across Mesoamerica, from elaborate stone chambers near temples to humble clay huts in rural villages. but what exactly transpired inside remains fiercely debated. Were these the ancient equivalent of modern spas or portals to the spirit world? The physical evidence tells a compelling story. Excavations at Tlaloc revealed a temazcal with 12 seating grooves along the walls, one for each hour of the ritual. Charred remnants of copal resin and medicinal plants like eucalyptus and sage littered the floor, while ventilation shafts precisely aligned with solar events during equinoxes. Most strikingly, a stone relief depicted a woman mid-childbirth inside a sweat bath, attended by a priestess pouring water over glowing volcanic stones. This fits colonial accounts describing temazcals as places where mothers prepared for labor and warriors purified before battle. Yet other digs uncovered more unsettling artifacts: obsidian blades buried beneath thresholds, and murals showing bathers vomiting black liquid into ritual bowls, possible evidence of spiritual purging. Medical anthropologists point to the bath's undeniable physiological benefits. The combination of heat and herbal steam could ease muscle pain, improve circulation, and even combat infections, knowledge still used by indigenous healers today. But traditional Nahuatl songs transcribed by friars describe visions experienced during the rituals, encounters with animal spirits, conversations with ancestors, even terrifying journeys through the underworld. The key may lie in the temazcal's architecture. Recent laser scans show that certain frequencies of chanting inside these domed spaces create resonant harmonics capable of altering brainwave patterns. Add the potent mix of psychoactive plants like peyote or morning glory, seeds sometimes thrown onto the stones, and the line between therapy and transcendence blurs entirely. Perhaps the most divisive discovery came from a remote site near Mesoamerican. Beneath a collapsed temazcal, researchers found skeletal remains of a young child laid carefully on a bed of healing herbs, its skull showing signs of hydrocephalus. Was this a desperate attempt at cure, or a sacrificial offering to the temazcal's patron goddess, Temazcal? The debate mirrors modern arguments about alternative medicine. Where does faith end and science begin? For the Aztecs, that distinction might never have existed. To sweat in the dark, to breathe in the essence of sacred plants, to emerge slick and shaking into the sunlight, this was healing as communion, where every drop of sweat carried both poison and prayer. Today, the tradition endures. Modern temazcal ceremonies, led by descendants of Aztec healers, still invoke the four directions and the elements. Participants report everything from deep relaxation to life-altering visions. Science confirms the bath's therapeutic effects, even as anthropologists struggle to categorize them: spa treatment or religious rite. The answer, like the steam curling through those ancient chambers, may simply dissolve when we try too hard to grasp it. The temazcal was never meant to be just one thing. It was and remains a place where body and spirit sweat as one, where healing and holiness steam from the same hot stones. The priest's obsidian blade glinted with terrifying precision as it arced downward, not a clumsy hack, but a surgeon's strike aimed perfectly between the ribs. Spanish chroniclers wrote of victims whose hearts were torn out so swiftly they reportedly beat several times in the priest's hand before stillness. For decades, historians dismissed these accounts as hyperbole, until forensic analysis of sacrificial remains at the Templo Mayor revealed cut marks so clean they could only have been made by tools sharper than modern steel. Obsidian, the volcanic glass favored by Aztec surgeons, fractures at the molecular level to form edges just 3 nanometers thick, 300 times finer than a surgical scalpel. Tests recreating the technique on ballistic gel show these blades could penetrate the thoracic cavity in under 2 seconds, minimizing traumatic shock. But the real mystery isn't just the how, it's the why behind the method's chilling efficiency. Surviving codices depict the ritual with unsettling anatomical accuracy. Priests reaching beneath the sternum to sever the aorta while avoiding the spine, a technique modern cardiologists confirm would keep the heart oxygenated long enough for those final beats. Some illustrations even show assistants pulling the victim's limbs taut to stretch the ribcage, creating optimal access. But the most provocative clue came from a 2018 study analyzing residue on ceremonial knives. Traces of Datura stramonium, a potent anesthetic and hallucinogen, were found alongside blood proteins, suggesting victims may have been drugged to both dull pain and induce visions. Could the Aztecs have viewed this state as sacred limbo, where the dying glimpsed the afterlife before crossing over? Medical anthropologists remain divided. Skeletons from mass sacrifice pits show no defensive wounds, implying victims offered little resistance either willingly or incapacitated. Yet spinal fractures near the cervical vertebrae hint at possible paralyzing strikes before heart removal, a brutal mercy. The debate intensified when researchers at Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology recreated the ritual's acoustics. The Templo Maya's design funneled chants and drumbeats into frequencies between 4 and 8 Hz, the same range known to induce trance states. Combine that with blood loss's natural euphoria, and the line between agony and ecstasy blurs entirely. Perhaps most unsettling is what the practice reveals about Aztec medical knowledge. Their surgeons could set bones, suture wounds, and even perform trepanations with survival rates rivaling European contemporaries. The same hands that delicately extracted hearts also pioneered early antiseptics using Meiji sap. This duality forces us to reconsider the ritual not as mere brutality, but as a macabre fusion of anatomy and theology. When a priest raised that still-beating heart to the sun, he wasn't just holding a muscle, he was holding a clockwork miracle, proof that life could be measured not in years but in the space between 2 heartbeats. The victim's final moments remain shrouded, but the obsidian blades whisper this much: for the Aztecs, death wasn't an end, it was the ultimate act of precision. Nightfall in Aztec villages carried whispers of a different kind of danger, not jaguars or enemy warriors, but shape-shifting women who slipped from their homes under cover of darkness, their bodies twisting into owls, turkeys, or even balls of fire. These were the Nahuales, often translated as witches, though the term barely captures their complex role in Aztec spirituality. Spanish missionaries documented terrified accounts of peasants spotting shadowy figures leaping between rooftops or dissolving into mist. But modern archaeology suggests these legends might have roots in a far more tangible ritual: the deliberate use of hallucinogens to induce transformative visions. Excavations at remote cave shrines, particularly around the sacred peak of Melanalco, have uncovered traces of datura, ololiuqui, and psilocybin mushrooms ground into ceremonial bowls. Residue analysis shows these potent concoctions were often mixed with cacao or honey to mask their bitterness, then consumed during nighttime ceremonies. Skeletons found in nearby caves bear distinctive wear on their femurs and pelvic bones, suggesting frequent kneeling and swaying, the physical toll of ecstatic dancing. But the most compelling evidence lies in the cave art itself. Faded murals depict human-animal hybrids mid-transformation, a woman's face merging with an owl's beak, hands elongating into claws, figures floating above the ground as if weightless. These weren't mere fantasies, they were likely records of first-hand experiences. Ethnobotanists studying traditional curanderos, healers preserving pre-Hispanic knowledge. Note that specific plant combinations can trigger synesthesia, the blending of senses that makes users see sounds or hear colors. In high doses, these substances also produce the sensation of flying or morphing into animals, what neuroscientists call zoomorphic hallucinations. But here's where science and spirituality collide. While Western researchers explain these phenomena as neurological misfirings, Nahuatl oral traditions insist the Nahuales didn't just imagine their transformations, they actually projected their tonality or life force into animal forms. A 16th-century codex describes witches rubbing their bodies with ointments containing toad venom and crushed beetles, then feeling their bones hollow like bird bones as they took flight. The debate took a startling turn in 2019 when archaeologists discovered a buried cache near Texcoco containing ceramic figurines of women with detachable animal masks, some still stained with a black tar-like substance. Chemical testing revealed traces of bufotenin, a compound found in certain toad skins known to induce out-of-body experiences. More chilling were the accompanying bones, several human femurs carved into flutes, their hollow interiors coated with the same substance. Had these been used to call the Nahuels back from their journeys, or were they tools for shaping the very sounds which is reportedly heard during flight, high-pitched whistles described in colonial accounts as the wind singing through hollow bones? Modern parallels add another layer. In remote Mixtec communities, some healers still practice a ritual called the Owl's Path, where initiates consume a brew of morning glory seeds before being sealed in pitch-black chambers for 3 nights. Those who complete the ordeal describe meeting their animal co-essence, a guardian spirit that guides their healing work. Skeptics dismiss these as drug-induced visions, yet anthropologists note something uncanny. Participants who have never met often describe nearly identical co-essences, down to specific markings or behaviors. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between biochemistry and belief. The Aztecs saw no contradiction in a ritual being both pharmacologically active and spiritually real. For them, the plants weren't just keys to altered states, they were living messengers, opening doors the sober mind could never perceive. When a Nahuel claimed to fly, she wasn't lying any more than a modern astronaut, lying about walking on the moon. Both journeyed to realms invisible from home, guided by the technology of their time, one by rockets, the other by the sacred chemistry of the earth itself. The flying witches of legend may never have physically sprouted wings, but in the minds of those who drank the brews and danced in the dark, the transformation was no less real. Their flights endure in cave paintings and bone flutes, in the shudder of a night owl's cry, reminders that some truths hover just beyond the edge of ordinary sight. The priest's fingers moved deftly, folding bark paper into the shape of a human figure no larger than a handspan, yet charged with sacred intent. This was no child's craft, but the heart of the Aztecs' paper-cutting ceremony, a ritual where blood and symbolism merged in ways that still baffle archaeologists today. Fragments of these paper figures, preserved in the dry caves of Tehuacan or tucked beneath temple floors, reveal intricate cutouts resembling jagged lightning bolts, spiraling labyrinths, and stylized tears. But here's the mystery. While we can reconstruct how they were made, mixing beaten fig bark with lime to create a pulp, then dyeing the sheets with cochineal or indigo, their precise meanings remain stubbornly encrypted. The act itself was visceral. Participants, often nobles or priests, would pierce their tongues, ears, or genitals with obsidian blades, letting their blood drip onto the paper figures. Colonial accounts describe how the red-soaked cutouts were then burned or buried, their destruction symbolizing the transfer of life force to the gods. But surviving fragments tell a subtler story. Under ultraviolet light, some show alternating layers of blood and plant resins, suggesting multiple rituals performed over time. One cache discovered near Tlaloc contained hundreds of miniature paper warriors, each with a unique glyph carved into its chest, perhaps representing the names of captives or deities. Yet the most haunting find came from a sealed chamber beneath the Templo Mayor, a life-sized paper effigy of the rain god Tlaloc, its hollow chest cavity lined with real human teeth. Why teeth? The answer might lie in the Aztec concept of tonally, the life energy believed to reside in blood, breath, and even enamel. But the patterns adorning these paper figures resist easy interpretation. Some match celestial constellations, others mirror the veins in leaves or the cracks in dried mud, a visual language we've yet to crack. Infrared scans of one particularly elaborate cutout revealed hidden layers beneath its surface, like a palimpsest of prayers. Was each fold and incision a coded message, or simply the spontaneous artistry of devotion? modern Huichol shamans still practice a distant cousin of this ritual, cutting figures from paper to absorb illness before burning them. But the Aztec version was likely far more complex. A recently decoded section of the Codex Borgia shows a priest holding a paper figure while standing atop a stream, possibly linking the ritual to water deities. Meanwhile, chemists analyzing residue on buried effigies detected traces of Toxcatl, a rare mineral pigment said to feed the gods. The deeper we dig, the clearer it becomes. These weren't mere offerings, but miniature universes where every drop of blood and twist of paper held cosmic weight. Perhaps the most poignant clue comes from an unexpected source, the Franciscan friar Bernardino de Sahagun, who recorded an elder's lament that the papers remember what our mouths forget. In the silent language of those fragile remnants, some now crumbling at the touch, we glimpse a philosophy where even the act of cutting was sacred. The scissor's path wasn't random. It traced the invisible threads binding humanity to the divine. And though the full lexicon of those patterns may be lost, their power lingers. When a modern conservator's breath accidentally sent a paper fragment floating across a museum lab, one witness swore it moved like a feather on the wind, not falling but ascending. The moment the sun began to vanish, swallowed bite by some unseen force, the streets of Tenochtitlan erupted into chaos. Drums pounded frenetically as priests scrambled up temple steps, their voices raw with chants meant to drown out the wails of terrified citizens. This was no ordinary celestial event. To the Aztecs, a solar eclipse signaled catastrophe, a moment when the cosmic balance teetered on collapse. Their term for it, Tenatia Qualo, translated chillingly to the sun being eaten, and if the people didn't act swiftly, the light might never return. Archaeologists have pieced together fragments of these panic rituals from carvings at Melanalco's circular observatory and star charts buried beneath the Templo Mayor. The most revealing clue, a stone disc unearthed in 1978, its surface etched with concentric circles and serpent tongues. When aligned with the pyramid staircase during an eclipse simulation, the shadows cast by the carving precisely matched the stages of the sun's disappearance. But the real genius lay in the disk's reverse side, grooves marking the 18.2-year cycle of lunar nodes, the exact astronomical phenomenon that predicts eclipses. How did the Aztecs without telescopes grasp this complex pattern? Some scholars argue they inherited knowledge from the Maya, whose eclipse tables were accurate to within hours. Others point to the alignment of pyramids like Chichen Itza's El Castillo, where the equinox sunset creates a serpent of shadow slithering down the steps, a living almanac in stone. Yet predicting the event was only half the battle. Surviving codices depict priests slashing their ears with magi spines, their blood splattering onto bark paper to feed the wounded sun. Women banged pots together to drive away the invisible beast devouring the light, while children were locked indoors lest their innocent energy be siphoned by the darkness. The most drastic measures unfolded in the shadows. Excavations near the Great Temple uncovered the skeletons of 7 captives buried in a radial pattern, their chests splayed open, sacrificed mid-eclipse as substitute suns to reignite the sky. Forensic analysis revealed something grisly. Their ribs showed burn marks, likely from torches pressed against flesh in a desperate mimicry of solar fire. Modern astronomers confirm the Aztecs had reason to panic. The eclipse of 1591, recorded in both Spanish and Nahuatl texts, coincided with a devastating drought, proof in their eyes that the gods were displeased. But the rituals weren't just superstition, they were precision-engineered theater. Murals at Teotihuacan show priests wearing ocelotl skins during eclipses, their spotted patterns mirroring the sun's dappled light during totality. Chemical traces on ceremonial blades revealed doses of psilocybin, perhaps used to induce visions of the sun's rebirth. Even the timing was strategic. Sacrifices peaked at third contact, the moment when sunlight first reappears, symbolizing victory over darkness. Today, we can calculate eclipses centuries in advance with digital precision. But standing in the ruins of Tenochtitlan during totality, feeling the temperature plummet, watching the eerie shadow bands ripple across ancient stones, it's impossible not to feel the ghost of that old terror. The Aztecs may have misunderstood the mechanics, but their rituals reveal a profound truth. In the face of the cosmic unknown, even the most advanced civilizations cling to the primal need to do something. Their blood offerings and skyward screams weren't just panic, they were a declaration that humanity wouldn't go gently into the dark. Beneath the opulent plazas of Tenochtitlan's marketplace, where jade and cocoa beans changed hands, archaeologists have uncovered a paradox-lavish graves filled with treasures from across Mesoamerica, their owners laid to rest with throats slit in precise ritual fashion. These were no ordinary merchants. They were the Toxcatl, the Aztec Empire's far-traveling traders who doubled as spies, diplomats, and most shockingly willing sacrifices to their patron god, Tlaloc, the Lord who guides. What set their rituals apart wasn't just the wealth on display, but the chilling intimacy of their devotion. Unlike temple sacrifices performed by priests, merchant ceremonies often took place in private courtyards, witnessed only by their tightly knit guilds. The artifacts tell a story of conspicuous piety. Excavations near Tlaloc, ancient marketplace, revealed tombs containing parrot feathers from rainforests 2,000 miles away, seashells from the Pacific, even remnants of vanilla orchids, goods so rare they were worth more than gold. One merchant's grave held a conch trumpet etched with a scene of its own use, a figure in a feathered headdress blowing it as blood dripped from his pierced tongue. But the most revealing find was a collection of hollow clay figurines, each filled with powdered tobacco mixed with ground jade. Chemical analysis showed traces of human blood in the mixture, suggesting merchants ingested this sacred snuff during rituals, literally consuming their own offerings. Why such extremes? The answer lies in the Toxcatls' dual role. As they traversed enemy territories to secure luxury goods, they also gathered military intelligence, making them indispensable to the empire. Their sacrifices weren't just acts of faith, they were down payments on divine protection for perilous journeys. A recently decoded section of the Codex Mendoza shows merchants staging mock battles where the losers, always volunteers from their own ranks, submitted to heart extraction, their blood smeared on bales of trade goods as a protective charm. Spanish accounts describe merchants wearing thorns embedded in their forearms for weeks, letting the wounds fester as proof of endurance. The excavations also hint at a darker economic truth. Skeletons from merchant graves show significantly less malnutrition than commoners, but also distinctive stress fractures in their feet and spines, proof of lifelong portage. Their wealth came at a brutal price. Perhaps that's why their sacrificial knives were uniquely ornate, their obsidian blades set in handles carved from rare red cedar. These weren't just tools, they were status symbols advertising the owner's ability to commission and surrender luxury. Modern parallels emerge in unexpected places. Contemporary Mexican business travelers still light candles to Saint Christopher, the patron saint of journeys, while some indigenous traders in Oaxaca whisper pre-Hispanic prayers over their wares. But the Toxcatls' full legacy may lie buried in a still untranslated pile of bark paper ledgers, where glyphs of hummingbirds, symbols of merchant souls, flutter alongside columns of cacao counts. Their sacrifices weren't just about earning divine favor, they were a form of cosmic accounting, balancing the ledgers of a world where every jade bead and spilled drop of blood carried measurable weight. The fallen warrior lay surrounded by petals, not the somber tokens of mourning, but vibrant orange marigolds, their bright clusters mirroring the wings of the butterflies that would carry his soul to the afterlife. This was the butterfly warrior ceremony, one of the Aztecs' most poetic and puzzling rituals, where death in battle transformed men into fluttering spirits linked eternally to the sun. Recent excavations at Tlaloc warrior burial pits reveal skeletons adorned with copper and gold pectorals shaped like butterfly wings, their delicate etchings catching the light even after centuries underground. But here's the riddle. Why does this imagery surge abruptly in the empire's final decades, absent from earlier Mesoamerican cultures? The symbology is striking. Aztec poetry describes fallen warriors as itzpapalotl, obsidian butterflies whose shimmering wings mirrored the lethal beauty of their weapons. Codices depict them ascending each dawn alongside Tanatia, the sun god, fueling his journey with the heat of their sacrificed blood. Yet the archaeological record shows a curious shift. Before the 1400s, warrior graves contained standard weapons and shields. Then, almost overnight, artifacts change. Jade beads carved into chrysalis shapes, spear tips engraved with wing patterns, even skull masks inlaid with iridescent beetle wings to mimic metamorphosis. One grave uncovered near Texcoco held a youth buried with his arms bound in actual butterfly wings, the fragile tissues preserved by rare mineral deposits in the soil. Scholars offer competing theories. Some tie the butterfly's rise to Emperor Ahuitzottl's reign, when military expansion demanded a more transcendent vision of death to motivate soldiers. Others point to climate records showing severe droughts in this period, sparking a cultural obsession with transformation and renewal. But the most compelling evidence comes from an unexpected source. A previously overlooked stanza in the Cantares Mexicanos, a collection of Aztec poetry. It describes warriors as flowers drunk on sunlight, their spilled blood nourishing the earth like nectar. Botanists note that the specific butterfly species depicted in later art, Danaus plexippus, follows migration routes coinciding with the Aztec war season. Was the metaphor borrowed from nature's own calendar? Modern experiments shed light on the ritual's sensory power. When researchers recreated the copper-winged pectorals using traditional techniques, they discovered something astonishing. Worn in sunlight, the metal's reflection creates a flickering effect, making the wearer appear to shimmer mid-flight. Combined with the narcotic smoke of burned marigolds known to induce mild trances, the ceremony may have produced visions of warriors literally taking wing. Yet the greatest mystery lies in the butterfly's fleeting dominance. By the time Spanish chroniclers arrived, the imagery was already fading, replaced by eagle and jaguar motifs. Perhaps the metaphor was too fragile for an empire crumbling under conquest, or perhaps, like the butterflies themselves, it was never meant to last. Today, the descendants of these warriors still emerge each fall, not on battlefields but in the monarch biosphere reserves of Michoacán, where millions of butterflies cluster like living homage to an ancient belief. That courage, like a chrysalis, is only the beginning of the transformation. The scent of fermented agave hung thick in the temple courtyard as the priest raised a foaming gourd high, its contents catching the last crimson streaks of sunset. This wasn't just a drink, it was pulque, the milky, potent brew at the heart of the Aztecs' most paradoxical rituals. Known as the drink of the gods, pulque blurred the line between sacrament and sin, celebrated and feared in equal measure. Recent excavations at Tepoztlan uncovered stone fermentation vats carved with the face of Toxcatl, the rabbit god of intoxication. Each vessel large enough to hold hundreds of liters, their interiors stained with residues of agave sugars and hallucinogenic morning glory seeds. But the real revelation came from glyphs hidden beneath the vats, warnings depicting drunken nobles stumbling into rivers or brawling in temples, a stark contrast to the drink's sacred status. Debate rages over pulque's dual nature. Spanish friars documented its use in coming-of-age ceremonies, where youths drank from ceremonial skull cups to commune with ancestors. Yet the same accounts describe strict laws forbidding public intoxication outside rituals, with penalties ranging from head shaving to execution. The archaeological record mirrors this tension. At the Great Temple, pulque jars were found stacked neatly alongside sacrificial knives, suggesting the brew was integral to high ceremonies. But dig sites in working-class neighborhoods tell a different story. Clandestine pulquerias hidden beneath floors, their walls scorched from fires used to mask the fermenting smell. One such hideaway, discovered beneath a Toxcatl marketplace, contained clay figurines of laughing drunks mid-dance, their faces twisted in grotesque euphoria. Were these tavern tokens or ritual objects? The answer may lie in the drink's chemistry. Modern recreations of ancient pulque reveal an unexpected twist. When fermented with certain wild yeasts, the brew reaches up to 12% alcohol, stronger than modern beer, while also producing trace amounts of lysergic compounds from contaminated morning glory residues. This accidental psychedelic effect could explain why pulque ceremonies often involved vision quests. A mural at Collula shows priests drinking from elongated tubes while floating above the ground, their bodies entwined with vine. But the most chilling evidence comes from bone analysis. Skeletons of heavy pulque drinkers show elevated mercury levels, likely from cinnabar powder mixed into elite batches to mimic blood, a sacred yet toxic additive. The rabbit god's role deepens the mystery. Toxcatl wasn't just a deity of revelry. He governed fertility and warfare, his many rabbit children representing the countless states of intoxication. Ceramic flasks shaped like rabbits often featured spouts emerging from their genitals or mouths, blurring pleasure and procreation. In one recently deciphered codex, a drunken rabbit dances atop a pyramid while simultaneously mating with a corn goddess, a metaphor for pulque's power to both nourish and destroy. Modern parallels persist in rural Mexico, where some curanderos still use pulque in healing rites, claiming it loosens the soul for diagnosis. But the Aztecs' true relationship with the brew may forever oscillate between extremes, a sacred elixir that birthed gods and a social menace that demanded control. Perhaps that duality was the point all along, a reminder that even the divine walks a knife's edge between ecstasy and excess, that every sip contained both prayer and peril. The rabbit still dances in the bottom of the cup, laughing at our need to categorize what was always meant to transcend boundaries. The obsidian mirror caught the torchlight in its depths, not reflecting the priest's face but swallowing it whole, a pool of black glass so polished it seemed to ripple like dark water. These were no ordinary-looking glasses. To the Aztecs, they were portals to the unseen, tools for glimpsing futures, diagnosing illnesses, or communing with deities like Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror god of fate. Recent excavations at the Templo Mayor unearthed 7 such mirrors, each buried in its own cedar box alongside bundles of hallucinogenic herbs and miniature gold bells. But what makes these artifacts truly extraordinary isn't just their craftsmanship, it's the discovery that their surfaces were meticulously ground using quartz abrasives until they achieved near-perfect flatness, with distortions measuring less than 1 micron. Modern opticians confirm this level of precision rivals today's surgical lenses, raising the question, how did artisans without magnifying tools achieve such flawless planes? The rituals themselves were exercises in sensory deprivation and controlled hallucination. Spanish chronicler Bernardino de Sahagún described seers fasting for days, then staring into the mirrors under the influence of ololiuqui, a potent morning glory seed brew. As their pupils dilated, the obsidian's natural imperfections, tiny mineral veins and microscopic pits, would warp into visions, swirling faces, distant battles, or the coiled form of the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl. Archaeologists testing replicas under similar conditions report eerily consistent results. When backlit by flickering torches, the mirrors produce moire patterns that appear to move independently, while the brain's tendency to impose meaning on randomness transforms these shifts into vivid imagery. One volunteer in a 2021 study even described seeing a city of gold beneath a volcano, strikingly similar to Aztec legends of the underworld. Yet the mirror's true power may lie in their material, Obsidian, volcanic glass born from explosive eruptions, was believed to carry the Earth's memory. Chemical analysis reveals many divination mirrors originated from specific quarries like Pachuca, whose distinctive green-gold sheen was thought to amplify visions. X-rays of one mirror now housed in the British Museum exposed something astonishing. Embedded within its depths are microscopic bubbles arranged in spiral patterns matching the Fibonacci sequence, a natural phenomenon, but one the Aztecs may have interpreted as divine geometry. Even more provocative are the traces of human blood found in the pores of several mirrors, likely from priests pressing bleeding fingertips against the surface to awaken it. Modern scientists propose these rituals exploited the brain's autoscopic response, the same phenomenon that creates out-of-body experiences. When deprived of external references, the mind projects its contents onto any blank surface, whether a mirror or a shaman's drum. But the Aztecs understood this as literal travel. A recently decoded section of the Codex Borgia depicts a seer's spirit emerging from his mouth as a blue mist, entering the mirror to consult with ancestors. Skeptics dismiss this as symbolism until you consider the mirror's placements. At Melanalco's circular temple, a buried mirror aligns with the winter solstice sunrise, casting a beam that illuminates a carving of a skeletal deity, suggesting the stones weren't just for seeing but for channeling. The most haunting discovery came from a remote cave near Oaxaca in 2019. Nestled in a crevice was a pouch containing a palm-sized mirror, its back carved with the face of Tezcatlipoca. Beneath it lay the skeleton of a teenage girl, her skull showing signs of trepanation, a hole drilled above the left temple. Forensic analysis revealed traces of psilocybin in her teeth and were patterns on her fingers indicating frequent mirror handling. Was she a seer in training, sacrificed when her visions grew too powerful? Or did she, like the reflections in the obsidian, exist between worlds, both priestess and offering? The mirror gives no answers, only endless depths. Stare too long, and you might swear it winks back. The night pulsed with the rhythmic stomp of bare feet against stone as a line of priests emerged from the temple shadows, their bodies painted in bands of black and ochre to mimic the scales of a giant serpent. Each carried a bundle of smoldering reeds, living embers that traced sinuous patterns in the darkness, transforming the procession into a living, breathing fire snake slithering through the heart of Tenochtitlan. These were the fire serpent processions, some of the most visually stunning and enigmatic rituals in the Aztec world. Recent excavations near the Templo Mayor uncovered stone serpent heads with scorch marks along their jaws, their hollow eye sockets still bearing traces of bitumen, a tar-like substance that would have burned with an eerie, oily glow when lit. But the real revelation came when researchers noticed something peculiar. The sculpture's undulating bodies were lined with tiny perforations, perfectly spaced to hold wooden rods that could be waved to create the illusion of movement in firelight. Theatricality was key to the ceremony's power. Spanish chroniclers described how priests wove through the streets with torches strapped to their backs, their movements choreographed to mimic a serpent's undulations. At certain points, they'd pause to ignite braziers filled with copal and crushed chili peppers, sending up plumes of fragrant, eye-watering smoke that blurred the line between reality and vision. But the most dramatic moment came when the procession reached the base of the great temple. A massive stone Zucotl, the fire serpent embodiment of the sun's path, was doused in resin and set ablaze, its carved body glowing like molten lava against the night. Infrared scans of these sculptures reveal layers of heat fractures, proof they endured repeated burnings. What's truly baffling is how the Aztecs engineered these pyro spectacles without modern tools. Chemical analysis of the burn residues shows they mixed pine pitch with beeswax to control burn rates, creating flames that could dance for hours without consuming the sculptures. A 2019 experiment using replica serpents and period-accurate fuels demonstrated how shifting wind patterns around the temple steps would have made the flames appear to crawl along the stone bodies. an effect that must have seemed like divine animation to onlookers. The deeper symbolism remains debated. Some scholars argue the fire serpent represented Huitzilopochtli's weapon, the Toxcatl he used to dismember his sister Coyolxauhqui in Aztec creation myths. Others point to codices linking the ritual to the dry season, when serpents were most active, but the most provocative theory emerged from a re-examination of the Florentine Codex, where a previously overlooked passage describes the procession's route mirroring the Milky Way's path across the sky. Could these fiery parades have been terrestrial reenactments of celestial events? Modern echoes of the ritual survive in festivals like La Danza de los Tecuans, where dancers wield flaming rattlesnakes made of woven cane. Yet nothing today compares to the original's grandeur. When conservators recently cleaned a fire-blackened serpent head from the Templo Mayor, they discovered flecks of gold hidden beneath the soot, proof that these weren't mere props but sacred objects gleaming like captured sunlight. In the flickering glow of 1,000 torches, with the night air thick with burning resin and chanting, the Aztecs didn't just worship the fire serpent, they became it, weaving light and shadow into something alive. The stones still bear witness, their scorch marks tracing paths of devotion we're only beginning to decipher. The dead noble's lips were parted just enough to reveal the glint of green, a single jade bead placed carefully on the tongue, its polished surface catching the dim light of the burial chamber. This was no random ornament. Jade, known to the Aztecs as Chalchihuitl, was far more precious than gold, believed to hold the breath of life itself. Recent excavations in Tenochtitlan's elite burial sites have uncovered dozens of skeletons with jade beads lodged in their dental palates or tucked beneath their tongues, each stone meticulously drilled with holes no wider than a pine needle. But here's what baffles archaeologists. While the Maya and Olmec before them buried their dead with jade masks and chest ornaments, the Aztecs broke tradition by focusing obsessively on the mouth. Why this peculiar shift? Forensic analysis reveals startling details. The beads weren't casually dropped in. Many show microscopic wear patterns from repetitive contact with teeth, suggesting they were worn in life as amulets, then purposefully repositioned at death. Chemical sourcing traces the jade to distant quarries in the Motagua Valley of Guatemala, a treacherous journey of over 600 miles. Yet the most provocative find came from a royal tomb beneath the Templo Mayor, where a noblewoman's skeleton held not just one bead but 12, arranged in a perfect circle inside her mouth. Infrared scans detected traces of tears of the sun, a resin mixed with powdered jade and human blood, coating the beads, likely a final offering to ensure safe passage. The contradiction lies in the Aztecs' own cosmology. Earlier Mesoamerican cultures associated jade with water and fertility, draping their dead in elaborate jade suits to mimic the lushness of the underworld. The Aztecs, however, linked it to the human soul's breath. A recently decoded section of the Codex Mendoza depicts a dying man exhaling a green mist into a jade bead, while priests chant spells to trap the wind inside the stone. This aligns with Nahuatl poetry describing the soul as a jade bird that could escape through the mouth unless anchored by sacred stone, but the practice wasn't universal. Commoners were buried with simple pottery or obsidian fragments, while warriors received miniature jade weapons, a hierarchy even in death. One excavation near Tlaloc exposed a grim exception, the skeleton of a sacrificed child, its jaw pried open post-mortem to insert a bead. The child's bones showed signs of chronic illness, leading researchers to theorize the jade was meant to heal the soul before its journey. Modern gemologists have replicated the drilling techniques, revealing the stone's hidden symbolism. Under polarized light, many beads contain natural inclusions resembling eyes or serpent coils, features the Aztecs likely interpreted as divine signatures. When placed on the tongue, the beads would have rested against the palate's moisture, creating a faint clicking sound if the body was moved. Were these sonic safeguards against grave robbers, or a way for the dead to speak to the living? The answer may lie in between. Today, descendants in Guerrero still place jade pebbles in oral graves, whispering prayers for the stone to hold the words the ancestors need. Meanwhile, archaeologists continue to debate whether the Aztecs innovated or inherited the ritual from some lost tradition. Each bead, each carefully drilled hole, is a mute witness to a belief system where breath was currency, and jade the ultimate tollkeeper on the road to eternity. The stones remain cool and enigmatic, still guarding secrets in the dark. In the shadow of grand temples and blood-stained altars, one of the Aztecs' quieter rituals unfolded beneath the earth, where the dead were laid to rest with a silent companion curled at their feet. Dogs, particularly the hairless Tlaloc breed, were frequently buried alongside human remains, their skeletons often found in fetal positions, as if guarding their masters even in death. Recent DNA analysis of these canine remains has revealed something unexpected. Many were genetically distinct from the common village dogs that roamed Tenochtitlan's streets. These animals bore the markers of deliberate breeding, their hairlessness a trait carefully cultivated over generations. But why? The answer lies somewhere between the practical and the spiritual, a duality that still divides archaeologists today. For decades, the dominant theory held that these dogs were spiritual guides, their role echoing a belief found across Mesoamerica that the hairless Tlaloc could navigate the treacherous underworld of Mictlan, leading souls through its 9 layers of trials. A mural at Teotihuacan depicts a red dog ferrying a human figure across a river of blood, while Aztec codices describe canines as soul bridges who could bark to alert the gods of a spirit's arrival. Physical evidence supports this. Many burial dogs were found adorned with jade beads or copper bells, their collars etched with symbols of the afterlife. One particularly poignant discovery in Tlaloc uncovered a dog buried with a miniature clay vessel clutched in its jaws, likely holding water for the deceased's journey. Yet other findings muddy this poetic interpretation. At certain mass burial sites, canine remains show butcher marks on their bones, their flesh neatly stripped in patterns consistent with ceremonial cooking. Isotopic analysis of their teeth reveals diets heavy in maize, suggesting they were fattened for consumption, perhaps as sustenance for the dead in the afterlife. This grim practicality aligns with accounts from colonial friars, who noted Aztec funerary feasts where dog meat was served alongside tamales and cocoa. The contradiction is stark. Were these animals revered guides or mere provisions? The most compelling evidence comes from a 2019 excavation near the Templo Mayor, where a double burial shattered previous assumptions. A high-ranking warrior and his dog were interred together, but forensic examination revealed the dog had been fed a lethal dose of chili-laced chocolate, a painless death far gentler than the warrior's sacrificial wound. Even more telling, the dog's paw rested atop a small obsidian knife, a gesture echoing the warrior's own burial weapons. This intimate detail suggests the bond between them transcended utility. It was a kinship honored in death. Modern Tlaloc breeders in Mexico still speak of the breed's old soul energy, a folk memory of their sacred role. Meanwhile, archaeologists grapple with the broader implications. Were some dogs sacrificed separately as offerings, while others accompanied specific individuals as protectors? The answer may lie in the details we've yet to uncover, like the recent discovery of a puppy buried with a spondylus shell in its mouth, a symbol of the watery underworld. Each grave tells a different story, a reminder that for the Aztecs, death was as nuanced as life. The dogs, silent and watchful in their eternal vigil, guard more than bones. They guard the fragile boundary between our theories and the truth still buried in the earth. Flames climbed the wooden pillars of the ruler's palace, licking at the brightly painted murals until the scenes of conquest and divine favor curled into ash. This was no accident or enemy attack. It was the house-burning ceremony, a deliberate act of destruction reserved for the most powerful elites in Aztec society. Archaeologists sifting through the ruins of Teotihuacan and Tenochtitlan have uncovered something peculiar. The homes of rulers and high priests weren't just abandoned or repurposed. They were systematically burned, often in intricate layers that suggest the fires were controlled like a ritual choreography. At the elite compound of Tepantitla, excavators found alternating strata of charcoal and intact offerings, proof that the structure was torched in stages, with precious objects deliberately left inside to be consumed. But why would a civilization known for its architectural marvels willingly reduce its own grandeur to smoldering rubble? The answer may lie in the symbolic weight of fire itself. To the Aztecs, flames weren't merely destructive, they were transformative, a force that purified and renewed. A ruler's dwelling wasn't just a residence, it was a microcosm of their reign, saturated with the spiritual residue of their decisions. By burning it, the community might have been enacting a cosmic reset, clearing the way for a successor to build anew without the burdens of the past. Evidence from the palace of the Quetzalcoatl supports this theory. Beneath its charred floors, researchers found deposits of jade beads and shell ornaments arranged in perfect circles, untouched by the blaze. These weren't hastily abandoned treasures, they were gifts to the earth buried before the fires began. The act of burning, then, wasn't erasure. It was an offering, a literal sending of wealth and history back to the gods. Yet there's a darker interpretation. Some burned palaces show signs of forced entry, their doorways barricaded from the outside before ignition. A fresco at the Temple of the Feathered Serpent depicts a bound noble watching his home burn, his mouth stretched in what could be a scream or a chant. Was this a form of posthumous punishment, a way to erase a disgraced leader's legacy? Forensic botanists studying the charcoal patterns note something unsettling. Certain woods, like cedar and copal, burn at temperatures high enough to leave no remains, precisely the materials used in beams where rulers' effigies once stood. Could this have been a calculated act of oblivion, ensuring not even memory survived? The debate intensifies when examining the timing of these fires. Stratigraphic dating reveals many occurred at the end of 52-year cycles, the same interval as the new fire ceremony. But others coincide with droughts, rebellions, or military defeats, suggesting the burnings might have been acts of communal catharsis. A recently uncovered codex fragment describes a ruler ordering his own palace burned after a famine, so the smoke might carry our sorrow to the gods. Modern experiments recreating the burns using traditional techniques reveal another layer. The combination of resin-coated wood and ceremonial incense would have produced thick, aromatic smoke visible for miles, a signal as much as a sacrifice. Perhaps the most haunting evidence comes from the ruins of a noble's house in Coyoacán, where archaeologists found the skeleton of a dog curled atop a pile of scorched corn kernels. Its collar bore a copper bell engraved with a glyph for renewal, yet its skull was fractured. Was this a loyal companion sent to guide its master's spirit, or a scapegoat bearing the household sins into the flames? The truth may lie in the ashes themselves, where traces of salt and crushed flowers hint at rituals too nuanced for any single explanation. The Aztecs understood fire as both end and beginning, a paradox etched into the very bones of their cities. Each layer of charcoal is a question. Were these flames of reverence or rejection? The answer, like the smoke long dissipated, may always remain just beyond our grasp. Buried beneath the great ball courts of Tenochtitlan and El Tajan, archaeologists have uncovered spheres of dark, gummy rubber, some as large as melons, others no bigger than a fist, each one placed with deliberate care in stone-lined pits alongside jade beads and miniature ballplayer figurines. These were no simple sporting equipment, they were sacred objects believed to hold the essence of the ball game's divine magic. The Aztecs didn't just play with rubber balls, they worshipped them, interring them in ceremonies as elaborate as those for fallen warriors. When researchers sliced open one such ball from Chichen Itza, they found something astonishing: a core of solid hematite, a heavy iron ore, wrapped in layers of rubber so precisely applied that the sphere bounced with eerie consistency. This wasn't just craftsmanship, it was alchemy, transforming sap into something that defied nature by returning to the sky with every strike. The process of making these ritual balls was itself an act of devotion. Rubber, harvested from the Castilla elastica tree, was mixed with juice from the morning glory vine, a combination modern chemists confirm creates sulfur bonds that vulcanize the material, predating Charles Goodyear's invention by 3,000 years. Workers in the Gulf Coast lowlands would boil the sap in ceramic pots, then roll it into spheres on inclined stone slabs still visible at sites like La Venta. But the real mystery lies in the additives. Some balls contain traces of ground obsidian or human bone ash, materials with no practical purpose, unless you consider the Aztecs' belief that rubber was the blood of the earth, requiring sacrificial elements to animate it. A mural at Tepantitla shows priests blowing tobacco smoke over freshly molded balls, their breath infusing the rubber with spiritual energy before play. Yet for all their reverence, the Aztecs left behind no codices detailing the ballgame's rules. The Spanish, who banned the sport as pagan, recorded only vague references to teams of 2 to 7 players using hips and elbows to keep the ball in motion. The absence of written guidelines has led to decades of speculation. Was scoring a goal an automatic death sentence for the scorer, as some glyphs suggest? Or did the losers face sacrifice, their blood nourishing the court like irrigation for a cosmic crop? The courts themselves offer cryptic clues. At Cantona, a stone marker depicts a player's severed head, while at Xochicalco, the rings are carved with calendrical glyphs, implying games might have been timed to celestial events. Perhaps the most haunting discovery came from a rubber ball grave at Veracruz, where 12 balls were arranged in a circle around a child's skeleton, its tiny hips wrapped in a stone yoke far too heavy for living play. Was this a dedication to the gods of the game, or a macabre offering to break in a new court? Modern experiments with replica balls reveal another layer. When struck with enough force, they emit a deep, thunder-like boom, a sound that would have echoed across the plaza like the voice of Tlaloc himself. The Aztecs didn't need written rules. The game's sacred power pulsed in the rubber, in the sweat of the players, in the blood that soaked the stones. Every bounce was a prayer, every match a reenactment of the cosmic struggle between light and darkness. The balls, now silent in their burial pits, still hold the imprint of those final, fateful games, where victory and death danced as closely as the players themselves. The artisan's hands moved with practiced precision, shaping the obsidian into a blade so thin it seemed to vanish when turned edge onto the light. These were no ordinary knives, they were the Aztecs' bloodletters, personal ritual tools as essential as prayer. Found in graves, household altars, and temple caches, these blades range from thumbnail-sized slivers to ornate ceremonial pieces with carved handles depicting serpents or gods. What sets them apart isn't just their sharpness. Modern tests show they could slice skin with less pressure than a mosquito's bite, but the secrets hidden in their microscopic grooves. Recent residue analysis has uncovered traces of substances far more complex than blood. A cocktail of psychoactive plants, sacred resins, and even marine plankton, meticulously applied to the blades before use. One study published in Journal of Archaeological Science examined 23 bloodletters from Tlaloc. Under ultraviolet light, their edges fluoresced with residues of Salvia divinorum, a potent hallucinogen still used by Mazatec shamans today. Even more surprising were the traces of fermented agave nectar mixed with the blood, a combination that, when introduced to open wounds, would create a mild burning sensation followed by numbness. This wasn't just pain management, it was sensory engineering. Ethnohistoric accounts describe bloodletting as a visionary act where the sting of the blade opened the door for communion with spirits. The chemical evidence now suggests this was literal. Strategic dosing turned self-sacrifice into a biochemical sacrament, but the revelations don't stop there. A cache of bloodletters from a midwife's burial in Texcoco tested positive for ergot alkaloids compounds found in fungus-infected rye, known to induce contractions. Were these tools used in childbirth rituals, their blades anointed to ease labor or honor the blood of new life? The same study found traces of Yortley, a fragrant marigold species with antiseptic properties, on blades from warrior graves. It seems every social class, every ritual purpose had its own curated blend. The most haunting discovery came from a teenager's burial near Lake Texcoco. His bloodletter, a simple obsidian flake no longer than a fingernail, bore residues of cacao and human breast milk. Soil analysis revealed the blade had been buried in a ceramic vial alongside umbilical cord fragments. Here, perhaps, was a grim glimpse of coming-of-age rites, a young man anointing his blade with the substances of his infancy before offering his own blood as proof of adulthood. Modern recreations of these rituals yield unsettling insights. When volunteers applied replica blades coated with the same plant mixtures to their skin, many reported vivid, trance-like states within minutes, effects far surpassing placebo. Neuroimaging suggests the compounds may have interacted with endorphins released during blood loss, creating a feedback loop of euphoria and vision. This wasn't just worship, it was neuroscience avant la lettre. Yet the full purpose of these concoctions remains debated. Were they spiritual amplifiers, medical treatments, or both? A broken mural at Teotihuacan shows a priestess bleeding onto sprouting corn, her bloodletter dripping blue-green, the exact color produced when oxidized copper mixes with certain plant alkaloids. Nearby glyphs label the scene the watering of time, hinting at a belief that blood, when chemically altered, could fertilize the cosmic order itself. Today, descendants in Oaxaca still use obsidian lancets for ceremonial blood draws, though the old recipes are lost. Meanwhile, archaeologists pore over the residue data, piecing together a pharmacopoeia of devotion. Each stain, each crystalline inclusion, whispers of a world where pain and transcendence walked hand in hand, where the body was both offering and altar. The blades endure, their edges still sharp enough to draw blood, and their secrets still sharp enough to cut through centuries of assumption. Digging through the ruins of a modest Aztec neighborhood near Texcoco, archaeologists uncovered row after row of upside-down clay pots, hundreds of them, carefully arranged in concentric circles with their openings pressed firmly into the earth. Not a single shard was broken, not one out of place. This was the night of the empty pots, a ritual so obscure that even colonial chroniclers only mentioned it in passing, calling it the silence of the vessels. There were no accompanying murals, no detailed codices, just this eerie ceramic army frozen in time. The pots themselves offer few clues. Petroglyph analysis shows they were all crafted from the same local clay, fired simultaneously in a single massive kiln event, then deliberately left unglazed. But here's what unsettles researchers. Soil samples from inside reveal traces of a long-evaporated liquid, its chemical signature matching none of the usual ritual substances, not pulque, not blood, not even water. Whatever filled these vessels vanished without a trace, leaving behind only faint crystalline residues that shimmer under microscopes like ghostly fingerprints. Theories about the ritual's purpose diverge wildly. One faction argues the pots served as spirit traps, their inverted mouths capturing malevolent forces during a vulnerable lunar phase. At the nearby site of Huixotla, similar arrangements were found beneath the floors of homes, suggesting a protective function. But others point to the pot's precise alignment with the Pleiades rise on a specific night in the Aztec calendar, a celestial event tied to agricultural cycles. Could the vessels have been part of a rain-calling ceremony, their emptiness a plea for the heavens to fill them? The mystery deepens when you examine the few surviving Nahuatl references to the ritual. A faded scrap of poetry describes the pots that drank the moon, while a merchant's ledger mentions trading black earth from the silent vessels as a medicinal ingredient. Then there's the enigma of the missing contents. Mass spectrometry detected abnormal levels of sulfur and a rare zinc compound in the residue's elements found near volcanic vents. This has led some researchers to propose the pots held geothermal water collected under ritual conditions, perhaps used in purification rites. But a radical counter-theory emerged in 2021 when a team recreating the ritual noticed something uncanny. When the pots were placed upside down at dusk, the cooling air created a faint harmonic hum as wind passed over their rims. Recordings of this sound played at certain frequencies induced alpha brainwave patterns in test subjects, the same state associated with deep meditation. Were these ancient sound baths designed to synchronize communal consciousness? The most haunting clue lies in the pots' distribution. They're never found near temples or palaces, only in commoners' districts, often clustered around the ruins of communal ovens. This has sparked a provocative idea. Perhaps the ritual wasn't about gods or cosmos, but about hunger. Ethnographers note that in some indigenous Mexican traditions, inverted pots symbolize scarcity, a silent protest against famine. The night of the empty pots may have been a collective act of resilience, with each vessel representing a family's empty stomach, turned earthward as both lament and spell for abundance. Modern attempts to reconstruct the ritual only deepen the mystery. During a partial solar eclipse in 2017, volunteers arranged replica pots in the original pattern. As totality began, condensation formed inside the vessels despite dry weather, a phenomenon physicists attribute to rapid temperature shifts. To the Aztecs, who saw eclipses as cosmic battles, might this sudden sweating of the pots have been read as a divine sign? Without more evidence, we're left grasping at shadows. The pots remain mute, their secret sealed tighter than their clay lips pressed to the dirt. Every inverted vessel is a riddle wrapped in earth, a reminder that some rituals resist interpretation not because they're lost, but because they were never meant to be spoken aloud. The jungle canopy hid its secrets well until the laser beams came. In the dense forest surrounding ancient Aztec sites, archaeologists now wield LiDAR scanners mounted on drones and aircraft, firing millions of invisible pulses through the foliage to map the earth below. The results are staggering. Entire ritual complexes unseen for centuries emerge from the data as ghostly contours, their outlines crisp against the digital landscape. At Melanalco, LiDAR revealed a hidden network of ceremonial causeways leading to a cliffside altar where the 3D scans showed blood channels carved into the rock with surgical precision, invisible to the naked eye after years of erosion. But for all its power, the technology has limits. A LiDAR survey near Tepoztlán detected what seemed to be a grand plaza until ground-penetrating radar exposed the structures as natural rock formations. The lesson: even the most advanced tools can't replace the dirt under the fingernails' work of excavation. Inside the lab, another revolution unfolds under microscopes. Residue analysis, once limited to identifying basic substances, now detects molecular traces left by rituals we never knew existed. When archaeologists examined a nondescript clay bowl from the Templo Maya, gas chromatography revealed a cocktail of tobacco, crushed morning glory seeds, and human blood proteins, evidence of a visionary brew sipped during rites of divination. In another breakthrough, protomics identified feather proteins from Quetzal birds on obsidian blades, proving Spanish accounts of priests using sacred plumage to wipe sacrificial knives. Yet these techniques have their blind spots. A recent study of supposed hallucinogenic residues in drinking vessels found nearly identical chemical signatures in ordinary cooking pots, proof that context is everything. Then there's the art of digital resurrection. Using photogrammetry and 3D modeling, researchers reconstructed the acoustics of Tenochtitlan's skull rack, simulating how chants would have echoed between the grisly displays. The models revealed a chilling effect. At certain frequencies, the sound waves created an auditory illusion of moaning voices, likely intentional, given the Aztecs' mastery of sonic symbolism. Virtual reality now lets scholars walk through vanished ritual spaces, like the recently digitized Hall of Columns at Teotihuacan, where light simulations show how solstice sunlight would have illuminated bloodletting scenes on the walls. But these reconstructions come with caveats. A VR model of the new fire ceremony based on Spanish accounts drew criticism for assuming uniform temple heights. When new excavations proved uneven platform levels, the entire soundscape had to be recalculated. Perhaps the most exciting frontier is isotopic analysis, which traces elements in bones and teeth like a geographic fingerprint. Skeletons from the Tlaloc marketplace showed strontium ratios matching distant obsidian mines, suggesting traders carried ritual blades hundreds of miles before their own sacrifices. Meanwhile, zinc isotopes in teeth from child offerings revealed prolonged maize diets, proof they were fattened for months before ceremonies. Yet even here, mysteries persist. Two skeletons buried with identical jade beads had wildly different lead isotope signatures, one local and one from Guatemala. Were they comrades from allied cities or captives from opposing realms united in death? These tools don't just answer questions, they rewrite them. DNA analysis of copal resin incense disproved the long-held theory that the Aztecs sourced it all from lowland forests. Some samples came from highland pines, hinting at unknown trade routes. X-ray fluorescence exposed gold ornaments in museums as actually copper-gold alloys, forcing re-evaluations of metallurgical skills. But the greatest revelation may be how much remains unknowable. A ceramic flask from a priest's tomb tested positive for over 40 botanical compounds, yet modern science can't replicate its effects because 13 of the plants are extinct or unidentified. The paradox of these technologies is their dual gift, clarity and humility. With each scan, each spectral analysis, we peel back layers of the Aztec world only to find deeper layers beneath. The obsidian blade's edge gleams sharper in our digital light, but the hand that wielded it still moves in shadow. The Aztec world was one where spirituality pulsed through every moment, where blood, smoke, and sacred whispers wove together into rituals as complex as they were enigmatic. These ceremonies weren't just acts of devotion, they were cosmic dialogues, meticulously choreographed conversations with forces beyond human understanding. From the precision of heart extraction to the haunting theater of the flayed god, the Aztecs crafted a spiritual landscape where nothing was arbitrary. A single jade bead placed on the tongue, the exact angle of an obsidian blade, the rhythmic spin of the Voladors, every detail held meaning, every act balanced the scales of existence. Their rituals reveal a society that saw the universe as a living machine, fueled by sacrifice and sustained by ceremony. And yet, for all we've uncovered, the gaps in our knowledge loom as large as the temples themselves. We can reconstruct the steps of the new fire ceremony, but what songs filled the darkness as the world held its breath? We've mapped the ball courts, but did the players know their fate before the game began? Each discovery peels back one layer only to expose three more. The Aztecs left no Rosetta Stone, no definitive guide, just fragments waiting to be read in the slant of sunlight on a carved stone, or the residue clinging to a priest's blade. The beauty lies in the mystery. Every time a storm unearths a new cache of figurines, or Lidea reveals a hidden causeway, we're handed another piece of the puzzle. Imagine what might still lie beneath Mexico City's bustling streets: lost codices, intact murals, perhaps even a royal tomb untouched by time. Future technologies could decode the chemical signatures of long-evaporated ritual brews, or AI might reconstruct the acoustics of ceremonies we've only guessed at. The story isn't finished, it's simply waiting for the next chapter. So tell us which ritual lingers in your mind, the solemn bravery of Tezcatlipoca's impersonator, living his year as a god. The eerie spectacle of priests cloaked in human skin, or perhaps the quiet power of the corn husk bundles whispering to the earth. Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's keep the conversation alive. The Aztecs may have vanished, but their mysteries still burn as bright as the copal incense that once curled toward their heaven.